It was the winter of 1867, when the snow settled thick and silent across the small town of Ashford, Massachusetts. The world seemed frozen in time. Coal smoke curled from chimneys, horse-drawn wagons creaked along cobblestone streets, and lamps glowed dimly through the fog of breath in the evening air. In one of the oldest houses on the outskirts of town, a child was born that year who would grow into something so unusual, so utterly defiant of logic, that doctors, priests, and scientists alike would be drawn into his story. His name was Timothy Caldwell, though history would remember him by a darker title. The boy science couldn't explain. Timothy's birth seemed ordinary at first. His mother, Margaret, was a frail but determined woman of Irish descent. His father, Charles Caldwell, worked long days at the lumber mill, a stern man with hands like stone. The Caldwells were not wealthy, but they were respected in Ashford. No one could have guessed that their son would become the town's most whispered about secret. Timothy was a quiet baby, too quiet. Most infants wailed and cried endlessly, but Timothy barely made a sound. Neighbors remarked how still he was, almost as if he were listening, studying every face and every shadow around him. His eyes were a peculiar shade of gray, almost colorless, and when he stared, it unsettled even the most hardened townsfolk. "He looks right through you," Margaret once said to a friend, her voice trembling. By the time Timothy was 5, the strangeness began. He would speak of things no child should know, events that happened in the past, accidents no one told him about, secrets of townspeople that left them pale with fear when he uttered them. "Mrs. Harrow," he once whispered to a neighbor, "your husband has a letter hidden in the lining of his coat." When the woman checked, the letter was there, an affair revealed in black ink. Timothy never smiled at the chaos he caused. He simply observed, like a mirror reflecting truth. Doctors in Ashford dismissed it as coincidence. "Children are clever," they said. "Perhaps he overhears conversations." But Margaret knew better. She had heard Timothy muttering in his sleep, speaking in voices that were not his own, recounting details of wars, ships, and cities far from Massachusetts. By age 7, the boy's abilities deepened. Animals responded to him in ways that baffled the family. Stray dogs followed him silently through the streets. Birds gathered on window ledges when he sat inside. Once, when Charles tried to discipline his son with a harsh hand, the lamps in the room flickered and shattered. The boy did not cry. He only looked at his father with that cold, unblinking stare. Charles grew afraid of his own child. Margaret grew protective, and the town grew suspicious. Rumors began to spread. Some whispered Timothy was blessed by God, a prophet in child's form. Others muttered darker things, witchcraft, possession, a curse on the Caldwell bloodline. In 1867, America, religion and superstition often held more weight than science, and Ashford was no exception. The church took notice. Father Whitaker, a strict and iron-willed preacher, visited the Caldwell home after reports reached his ears. He questioned Timothy, asking about faith, about the Bible. The boy listened politely, but said nothing. Then, as Whitaker prepared to leave, Timothy spoke softly. "You doubt God at night. You think of the ocean, and the storm that took your brother. You wonder if God was cruel to let him drown." The priest froze, his face drained of color. No one knew of his brother. No one. Whitaker left the house in silence, never returning, but from his pulpit he began to speak of evil in Ashford. Though he never named Timothy directly, everyone understood his meaning. By the age of 10, Timothy had become an outcast. Children refused to play with him. Parents crossed the street to avoid him. Yet the more the town rejected him, the more unexplainable his presence became. Doctors from Boston heard whispers of the boy and traveled to Ashford to study him. In 1877, Timothy was brought to the city for examination at the Massachusetts General Hospital. Records from that time, though scarce, describe his case as peculiar. He displayed no unusual physical abnormalities. yet his mental abilities were far beyond his years. One doctor recorded that Timothy could recite entire pages of medical texts after a single glance. Another claimed the boy knew personal details of his life, things he had never spoken aloud. When asked how he knew, Timothy only shrugged. "It's always there," he said, "like someone telling me in my head." By adolescence, his presence seemed almost unnatural. Lights flickered when he was near. Mechanical instruments failed. Patients in the hospital reported hearing him in their dreams, even when he had never spoken to them. Scientists called it coincidence. Klager called it possession. Timothy himself offered no answers. At 15, something happened that sealed his fate in history. A young girl named Sarah Briggs fell gravely ill with fever. Her family, desperate, brought her to Boston. Doctors predicted she would not survive the night, but Timothy, who was also at the hospital, insisted on sitting with her. Nurses reported that he held her hand silently for hours, whispering words in a language none could identify. By dawn, Sarah's fever had broken. Within days she was walking again. News of the miracle boy spread quickly. Some called him a healer, others called him dangerous. Scientists were summoned from Harvard and Yale, men of great intellect who tried to trap his abilities in charts and data. They could not. One experiment stands out in the records. Timothy was placed in a sealed room with a series of questions written in locked boxes. Without touching the boxes, without seeing the questions, he answered each one correctly. Skeptics accused the researchers of fraud, but those who were present swore by what they had witnessed. By now, whispers reached even across the Atlantic. Reports of Timothy Caldwell appeared in newspapers in London, Paris and Berlin. Was he proof of hidden human potential, or evidence of something beyond science, something supernatural? But Timothy never sought fame. He avoided the spotlight, retreating into silence whenever crowds gathered. When journalists tried to speak with him, he often gave cryptic replies. "I am not what you think I am," he once said. "I am only a shadow of something larger." At 19, tragedy struck. Margaret Caldwell, the only person who truly protected him, passed away from illness. Timothy did not cry at her funeral. Instead, as mourners gathered, he looked to the sky and said, "She is not gone, she is only waiting." His words unsettled the crowd so deeply that several left in fear. After his mother's death, Timothy's life grew darker. His father, who had long feared him, distanced himself entirely. Alone, Timothy wandered from city to city, leaving behind a trail of stories that blurred the line between fact and legend. In Philadelphia, he was accused of stopping a man's heart with a single touch. In New York, he was said to have predicted the exact time of a building collapse, saving dozens of lives. In Chicago, witnesses claimed he disappeared from a locked room, only to be found sitting calmly on the roof. By 1886, Timothy Caldwell was no longer just a boy. He was a man in his 20s, a figure wrapped in mystery, studied by scientists and hunted by priests. Yet no one could fully explain him. His abilities did not fade with age. If anything, they grew stronger. The last confirmed record of him appears in 1892, in a journal kept by a physician in Baltimore. The doctor wrote, "He is unlike any patient I have ever observed. His body ages, but his mind seems connected to something eternal." When I asked him what he believed he was, he replied, "I am not the beginning, nor the end. I am only a reminder." After that, Timothy Caldwell vanished. Some say he fled to Europe, others believe he was taken by government officials for secret study, and some whisper that he never truly died, that he walks still, unseen, passing among us. What makes Timothy's story so haunting is not just the mystery of his abilities, but the impossibility of explaining them. Science, religion, superstition, all failed to contain him. He existed in a space between logic and faith, between the natural and the supernatural, and so, more than a century later, his name lives on. Timothy Caldwell, the boy who knew what no one told him, the boy who healed with a whisper, the boy who could not be explained. Perhaps he was a glimpse into what humanity might one day become. Or perhaps he was something else entirely, something not human at all. We may never know, but if you walk alone on a cold night, and feel the air shift around you, or hear a voice whispering secrets in your mind, you might wonder if Timothy Caldwell still lingers, waiting, reminding us that not everything in this world can be measured, tested, or explained, because sometimes the greatest mysteries wear the face of a child. As the months went on, scientists from across Europe arrived to see Timothy for themselves. Some brought complicated instruments, others brought holy relics, hoping to test whether what they were seeing was natural, supernatural, or something else entirely. Timothy, however, remained the same calm, soft-spoken boy who had no explanation for why he was different. He never sought attention, never asked for money, and seemed almost confused about why people wanted to study him so closely. His innocence only deepened the mystery, making people believe even more strongly that what they were witnessing could not be faked. One strange event in particular cemented Timothy's legend. One night, during a severe thunderstorm, lightning struck a tree near the Caldwell farmhouse. Witnesses swore that Timothy, who had been standing outside at the time, was engulfed in the blinding flash, but instead of being harmed, he walked away untouched, the energy crackling around him, as if it had passed through without injury. The next day, word spread like wildfire, and the boy science couldn't explain became a symbol of something beyond human comprehension. Newspapers from America to Europe printed his story, though each offered different interpretations, some calling him blessed, others cursed. As Timothy grew older, the fascination with him did not fade. In fact, the debates around him only became more heated. Churches argued over whether he was proof of divine intervention, while scholars insisted there must be an undiscovered scientific principle at work. Meanwhile, in the small town of Ashton Hollow, life carried on. Though everyone knew they were living near a legend, travelers came in droves, some leaving disappointed when Timothy displayed nothing unusual, while others swore they felt an energy in his presence that defied reason. The town itself became a place of pilgrimage, forever linked to the boy who seemed beyond explanation. By the time Timothy reached adulthood, he had grown weary of the constant questions. He longed for an ordinary life, to farm the land like his father and raise a family of his own. Yet no matter how much he tried to step away from the spotlight, the world would not let him. His name remained etched in history, passed down in whispered stories and newspaper clippings, preserved as a reminder that not everything in life can be solved or neatly explained. And so, Timothy Caldwell's story lingered, not just as a tale of a boy in 1867, but as a timeless reminder of humanity's unending search for meaning in the mysteries that surround us.